Today, we're going to dig into what is the foundation of a person's success. We know it's hard work. We know it's studying. We know it's spending the time. But what is below that? What truly motivates a person to do what they do? In other words, why did you choose to come to college? Why did you choose to advance your knowledge so that you could have a better career? What was really involved in that? So let's take a look. This is my take on what all that is. This little article I put out on a little site, because it's easier for me to actually update this one place than to update it in Canvas. So foundations for success. So again, what makes success? What makes success in college? Well, it's the same thing that makes success anywhere, really. And I believe it boils down to these three fundamental things. So obviously there's going to be other things involved, but for me, I boil it down to these three things. Number one, your desire to do something worthwhile. Number two, you envisioning yourself achieving it. In other words, dreaming about what the future will hold for you. When I complete this, this is what my life will be like. And then working to achieve that goal. And obviously this is a huge part, but you never get to the third step if you can't do the first and second step, right? So let's dig in a little further and see, what does this really mean? What are we talking about here? Okay, so desire is what lies beneath our dreaming and our working. It's the feeling that we have inside to do something, whatever that something is. And hopefully that something is good. But it's that feeling of I want my life to be better, right? That's a desire. I want my life to be better. And so it begins with that little seed of saying, this is what I think is going to make me happy in life. That's usually where it starts. The problem is that we are often not prepared for the disconnection that happens once we see this desire and then we start moving forward. Now, what I mean by that is that you can have a lot of different desires, but most of them are not going to move you to action. They're not going to push you forward. And so I give you a little example here. Let's imagine that you really want to go into history, that you love history. Maybe you've grown up watching things on TV about history and you're like, wow, that's just really fascinating stuff. So you imagine a future where you teach history, or maybe go into politics, or maybe even become a lawyer. They have to know a lot about history. So after your 100 level history courses, you decide to take, I'm going to take a 200 level, right? And in college, that should mean, some instructors don't follow this, but most do, that's a second year class. And so that's going to be harder than the first year class you took. That's actually what we're trying to straighten out with the numbering. Anyway, so it's more demanding, more detailed. You have to do much more in it. And then as a result, you realize that your desire is not strong enough to motivate you to take all the difficult courses that you're going to have to take. In other words, you like history, you have a desire to learn more about it, but you don't want to do a career in it, right? That's a fundamental thing that happens. And that's what I mean, that we're often not prepared for that situation. And then we're like, oh, geez, what do I do now? And it really bogs us down. I've always found that if you know this is what's going on in your life, I'm going through this process, then it's easier for you to switch and transition and say, well, what about this? Or what about that? Or I also like this, or I also like that. Let me check that out. Where if you don't know that you're going through this, people can really get lost in what they're trying to do. They can just really get flummoxed, as they say. All right, so is it a strong interest or is it a desire? Well, once you get to the point where, yeah, you've kind of tested it out and you do have an interest that's stronger than just, a fun thing to do, you get to the envisioning, which is the solidification of desire. It's that dreaming. It's that, okay, I'm in technology courses and I'm going to have to take some classes that I really don't like. And I hope I never have to work in that area. And I'm going to have to get through those. And that envisioning is what motivates you to do that. That you say, okay, well, I got these classes I like. Maybe you liked HTML a lot, and that was really wonderful. But now I got to take that networking class, right? Or vice versa. And so that envisioning is the thing that keeps you propelled forward. You know, it's like so many people that have achieved great things. Keep dreaming, right? Keep dreaming. Don't lose that desire that you have, because once you get to this envisioning stage, right, you're solidifying your desire. So those two are feeding off of each other. You have this desire, you went, and now it's become stronger because you're taking classes and you're feeling good about your decision of what you're doing. And so you're solidifying that desire, and that strengthens your desire, which strengthens your envisioning of what you're trying to get accomplished. And then, of course, working. And look at that. It's the biggest section, right? It's the biggest section. So under working, we have studying, because that's specifically for us here in the education system, going through our educational foundational classes. So, okay, so working to achieve your dream or desire is where so many students fail, which is true. You can say it tons and tons of ways, but when the road gets tough, the tough get going, right? It can be said so many ways, but that's a very popular way to say it. This is going to be a tough road, and I need to get going on that road, not let the tough road stop me. Right? So you start to wonder. The interesting thing to me is that those who fail in IT won't work any less to achieve success anywhere else. I should put else in there. But they often end up getting paid less. Commit to doing the hard things now. This will pay off in happiness and prosperity later. Now, what I mean by this is I'll have students that will, once they get into, again, I use the networking class as an example. Once they get into that class, they're like, oh my goodness, this is so hard. I'm not going to pick an industry that's this difficult. Well, then you really have to look at some things here. Was it just an interest for you and not really a desire? Or do you not understand that everything, whatever path you choose, is going to have some very difficult things to do in it? And I envision some of these students as they move forward and go, you know what, I'm not going to do this anymore. This is too tough. I'm going to do something else. Going into other classes going, yeah, this is better. This is better. And then somewhere down the road, like they need a bachelor's or something, like, oh man, this is hard, right? Maybe I should have just done the hard thing to begin with. I'm not even sure if I want to do this that I'm going into, right? Life is going to have those difficulties, and the honest truth is anything out there that's going to pay you well is going to be difficult. And later we talk about that, but there's distinct economic reasons why that happens. And so there needs to be a demand out there, and then some other things. We'll talk about that later. So it's interesting to me that a lot of people that kind of fizzle out in technology are going to have to go do something else, realize that's just as difficult, and then not get paid as well as they would have gotten paid. And what I really, really dislike is that many out there, and I've seen these, people that I've taught working at a store, checking people out, and I have nothing against that. That's a fine. I don't really mind what anybody does in life to make money. I don't think that there's this hierarchy that needs to exist, and that, oh, if I'm a doctor, then I'm this and I'm better than you. That's all a bunch of bull. What I feel bad about is that they're not making the money, right? They're spending the same amount of time in a day doing a very difficult task, because dealing with people all day long is really difficult, and getting paid very little for it. And why did they not stick with school? Why didn't they not do it? Well, they end up finding this working hard thing and getting themselves trained to how education works and what they need to do every single week. And they fail in that. And so then they go, school's not for me, right? Or I don't learn in a classroom. I don't know how many people that I've seen that are my age, well, I really don't learn in a classroom. They'll say that. And it's like, anybody can learn in a classroom. Lots of people say I'm hands-on, and they think that somehow that's a good thing in technology. And I'm like, you can only learn about this much in technology hands-on. You got to read a ton to learn the rest of it, right? You've got to be able to put that work in. And of course, the worst is I'm not smart enough. School is not for me because I'm not smart enough. And that's just not the truth. And I hope none of you will say that to yourself. And I hope none of you have said that to yourself. But if you have, that's not true. That's not at all true. Trust me, I have a son that's got cerebral palsy. Cerebral palsy really literally means brain damaged. And there are some things he'll never be able to learn because physically he doesn't have that ability. You're a normal person. You can learn whatever it is that you want to learn. Now, to give you an idea of this, several years ago, they did a study on child prodigies. Now, child prodigy, what does that mean? That means those are the kids that go to school and they graduate at 12 or 13, and then they've got their doctorate by the time they're not even out of their teens, and they have a doctorate degree, right? And we call them prodigies. Now, also what a prodigy means is that they've got better mental capacity. Maybe they've got an eidetic memory, or they can just study anything and remember it. Maybe they're not eidetic, but they can really study just about anything and remember what they read. Those are kind of the people that we really are referring to as child prodigies. But the study found out that most of these kids were actually not prodigies. What were they? These students, once school was over, went home and studied until they went to bed, taking only a short break to eat. So let's take a look at how many study hours that really is. So in the morning, they studied before school. So let's say they woke up at 6, took an hour to get ready and eat. This would leave them 30 to 40 minutes in the morning to study. Then a full day of school, right? 8 to 3, so 7 hours, 6 if you have time for lunch, it depends on your school. And then 7 to 8 more hours once they came home. Yeah, so what was happening is they're just studying all the time. So we commonly have these perceptions, and I've actually heard, movie stars and comedians that are Asian say this, that, they go, oh, you're Asian, you're so smart. You Asians are so smart. And then they'll tell them, well, when your parents force you to study every hour of every day, you can accomplish a lot. That's literally what they say. So that's 14 or 15 hours of academic study. So if you think you did that in school, right? If you had done that in school, wow, where would you be, right? So I'm not sure I'd be a prodigy even with that schedule, but I would bet that you would. I really had a hard time studying, and not a hard time studying, a hard time learning. I studied a lot, but I had a hard time learning at that time. So instead of being prodigies, they were just normal kids pushing themselves, or in reality being pushed by their parents. And so they actually found out, this is not in this little paper here, but actually found out that most of them did not end up working in the fields that they even got their PhDs in, or teaching or anything, because they were very maladjusted, because their life was just education and that's all it was. And so they ended up doing something else, trying to adapt to something else. The bottom line is, though, if you put in the time, you will succeed. Now, maybe that time frame is different for you because you don't have that educational background. Some people, right, they just kind of click in school. Like I said, I was not one of those persons. As a matter of fact, that's why I graduated. That's why I gravitated towards computers, because I just seemed to understand them better, or my interest and desire was higher enough to learn them. Something that was not common in the classroom. I didn't have them in every classroom, that everybody didn't go home and use them. And so for me, I was fascinated by this little niche that I could get into. And so anything about computers, I just picked up like that, and my brain just absorbed. But everything else, I had to work and work and work. And so to get the same B in that class as my friend, I had to put in this much time, where my friend only put in this much time to get that B. Right? You have to deal with that. And I will tell you that does change over time. I remember going back to my master's degree about 10 years after I graduated with my bachelor's. Oof, first 6 months was terrible. I spent so much time getting my brain retrained on how to do things. It would just be like if you lifted weights all the way through high school and then you quit, and then 10 years later you go back to it. You would not expect to go back and go, well, let's see, what did I stop at here? I was benching 210. Let me just put that on there. I can bench that. That's not going to happen, right? And it's the same with our brain. Right? Our brain doesn't move an arm the same way our muscles do, but it's that repetition in our mind that really helps. Anyway, so let's take a look. What are the proper study habits? Right, so mentioned this briefly. College course credits are based on how many 50-minute periods a student must attend. That's what it is. 3 credit course, therefore, is 3 times 50-minute periods. So 3 50-minute periods. It is expected, as specified by the US government, that there will be an equal out of class time spent 3 times 50. So they're saying 3 50-minute periods face-to-face, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then 3 hours that your 3 50-minute periods you're spending outside of class. That's the way the courses are pushed to be developed to be in compliance with what the US government standards are. So some of that has changed to how it's delivered, right? And that kind of changes things. So as an example, the CIS 170, CMP 100, this class, which is a 3 credit course, right? That's what it is. And the workload is supposed to be what I just said. So let's simplify this by saying each class period equals an hour, right? It's kind of start, okay, 50, and we can do it. I'll have you do it in a spreadsheet. But it's easier to just say, well, okay, I spent 3 hours in class, so I spend 3 hours out of class, right? That's what we're equaling. So 6 total hours of study time a week is what you ought to be spending. So if you've heard this before, great. This is I'm trying to get that into your head. 6 total hours of study time a week. But that's not usually what people do. So educational experts actually say, before we get to what people usually do, is that a student should study 2 hours for every 1 spent in class. All right, so that increases your time that you should spend to 9, 3 for class, 6 out of class. Now, the truth is we know that some classes require much less, some classes require much more. And in the computers, right, we really try to gauge that to that time frame of 6 total hours a week, 3 face-to-face, 3 not. But there are classes that go beyond that, which CMP 250, which is this massive fundamental IT class, is one of those courses where you need to study more. As I looked, right, so we have lots of great tools for instructors now, and I can go in and I can say, show me how much time the student has spent in this material. I can tell you that the students that are doing awesome in that class, which is really difficult, are someplace in between their 6 hours a week and 9 hours a week. The ones that are doing extremely well and seem to know everything that we've been talking about are the ones that have spent 9 hours a week. But that's really only about 4 students out of the, say, 18 that I have. All the rest of them are much lower, and the ones that are totally failing, it's just dismal. So it is about time, right? How much time that you spend focused on that material. So it's easy to see why they fail. If you won't put in the time, you won't get the grade. And in this field, that translates to you can't do your job, right? This is a very technical field. And we are seriously trying to give you every technical thing that we can so that when you go in, you feel capable and that you're ready for the challenge of learning new things that you can't cover in class. And we want you to go, whew, thank goodness I went to EA. And we want the person that hired you to go, where did you go to school? Right? That's what I would like to hear from them. And I can't force you to do that. But I can give you all the help that you need, especially in this class, in saying, look, this is what you're headed into. Dedicate the time. You're not an idiot. You are a person that can learn this information. You just need to put in the time to do it. And as I say down here, you know what? Remember, the amount of time you spend understanding the material in your classes will be equal to your success in those classes. So in other words, if you're not being successful in the class and you're going to, say your third or fourth week in class and I'm saying something to you and you're like, what? I don't get this. I don't understand. A lot of people jump up here, right? A lot of people jump up and say, I just can't do it. Right? They say school is not for me. Apparently I can't learn. I'm not smart enough. That's what they do. Instead of looking at the reality and going, wait a minute, how much time did I spend studying? Oh, not that much. What I'm trying to do is break you from this idea that we tend to have in this society that things need to be easy and that prodigies, like if you're a basketball prodigy, it just happened for you and you just loved everything that was involved in it to become this great basketball star or football or whatever it happens to be. And of course, the reality is we know this. See, that's what we want to believe. But we know the reality of it is that person just worked their tail off all the flipping time in order to get to where they were. And somehow we want to believe in the dream where the superhero, right, spends a 5-minute montage working out and learning about their powers, and then they go out and save the world. In reality, right, that would be years and years and years and years if that existed, right? So remember that. Put in the time and don't let yourself get down. So if you have a really rough week and you just kind of blow off everything, don't let that linger into the next week, right? Don't go, oh, well, missed this week, so I will just give up now. A lot of people will do that too. They'll go, well, I didn't do so well these last couple of weeks. Well, then pick it up, right? Pick it up, start moving faster. It's one of the great things that people learn in the military and going through boot camp is that you will do this, you will do this. And for some, it pushes that to the edge of death, right? But they do it and then they realize, hey, I can do this, I can do this. I'm hoping that you'll remember this, that as you go through and you start to, even in this class, you start to just blow it off and not do much, that you'll realize it's because I'm not doing my work. It's not because I can't do it. It's because I'm not doing it. And maybe there's other things in your life going on that make it difficult, but that's where you have to kind of start separating things out and saying, this part of my life's really difficult, but I got to focus. I got to focus on this because my dream is to be here, right? And you can do that. We're working for what our desire and what our dream was. And you can have that, no joke, right? When we get to the section in here, when you get to actually look for jobs and see how much they get paid and where they're at, I'm hoping you dig in on that because the truth is, right, you're going to find I can go anywhere. Do I want to travel? Wow, what do I want to do? I want to work for the NSA. What do you want? It's there for you. All right, so let's take a look at to be a success. So breaking this down a little further, learn how to take effective notes in class, right? Notes, I'm trying to entice you by taking notes on this video right now so that you can use them on a test, so that you'll start to link together, wow, those notes actually do work. They help me retain the information. My hope, of course, is someday you don't need to take the notes, but in order to get to that point, you have to take them. And you have to learn how to pick out of what McBride said is really important, and that's what I'm writing down. That's why my quizzes are based that way too. I don't just go through and say on the fourth paragraph, I said, I'm not looking for those kinds of notes. I want to see, did you pick up the topics? Did you understand? All right, study to understand. This will make assignments easier. So many times people they're kind of aggravated about having to learn, and so they don't spend any depth learning. They spend just a little time, and then that causes them a huge issue. And the huge issue is when they go to do the assignment, they go, I don't know what I'm doing. And now they're reinforcing I'm not good at this, when really focus on understanding this material. I'm hoping that you read through this, not just I watched the video. right? That you read through this, that you get the concepts in your head, that you have good notes, and then you go take that and you're like, wow, that test was a piece of cake. Because studying to understand makes the assignments easier, right? Many students have that brain dump mentality, learn for a test, then dump it. And that has been trained into students, and you have to get out of that mentality. Organize yourself, use technology to remind you to study, when assignments are due, what tests are coming up. I can't believe it. How many students have, something like this, which is awesome, and then they don't use anything. I need to put those assignments in. And you may say, oh, I'd spend hours putting in all those assignments. Okay, then get the app for Canvas and have it remind you, right? It's all there. Review course material and your notes prior to class. I've only seen a few students in my entire teaching life that do this, that actually will take and let me review notes so I get my brain into the mode of it's time to build on what I've learned before. That's really what they're doing. Participate in class discussion. The best students I have, I'm going to ask a stupid question, but let me ask it. Right, they're reaching in their mind. They're not just shutting down and sitting there. They're reaching for, okay, so you're saying this, McBride, you're saying IP this. So what layer was that? And they're not afraid to be wrong. Oh, that's layer 2. No, it's 3. Oh, okay. They're using that class discussion time to actually build in their brain the information they need. Ask questions. Right? And give yourself enough time to research, write, and edit your essays in a manageable strategy, in manageable stages, in a manageable strategy. Give yourself enough time to do that. Again, so many students will go, oh, okay, and then they pride themselves on the crap job they did. I don't know how many students have had come into a 103 class and go, yeah, I just counted that English paper out. I only spent 7 hours on it. They don't say that. They go, I only spent 3 hours on it. They always shorten how much time they actually spent. Yeah, I got a B. They're proud about that. It's like, wow, just think if you actually knew what you were doing, right? Someday when you get a job, you'll have to know what you're doing. And when you write that up, it'll have to be good. So take advantage of doing that now. Take advantage of online or on-campus academic support resources. So if you really need help, I have students that have had trouble reading. That makes everything difficult for them. Get some help now. Don't wait till later to do it. And then spend sufficient time studying. Do that. Spend sufficient time studying. So during the semester, if you find yourself thinking that you can't make it, review the above and see what you're not doing. I know, who would want to do that? That sounds too smart. Right? Because really what happens is when you see yourself and you're saying, I don't know if I can make it. I don't know if I can make it. You're probably not doing this enough, right? You're not doing these things. You're not doing this. And so because of those deficiencies, you're not able to succeed. If you have ever seen, you might be this person. And so all of this, you're like, yeah, I've done that forever. But if you've ever seen somebody in school that is really, really good at what they do in school, they just always seem to be getting good grades and everything, right? We tend to say, they just have an easier time at it. And obviously, most are not going to tell you what their study habits are because, as a teenager, you don't even know that you're doing something different than somebody else. But the truth is they're probably doing all these things. Now, maybe they're not participating in class discussion or study group because maybe that's not happening at all. But all the other stuff they're doing, it's in their nature to do it. And they figured that out young. And so good grades, good grades, good grades, good grades all the way through. And once you get that train rolling, it's not going to stop for you. As I said, coming back after 10 years of not taking a class, it took me 6 months to really get my brain back to where I could start doing classes and learning information much easier. And the whole rest of that degree was not massively difficult for me because I'd already had all this in place. I just needed to get it going again. If you have questions or comments, please let me know. Those of you that have been out there in the business I love to hear your comments on this. A lot of times I will add information to the material based on what somebody said about their life and what they had to learn. So feel free to add in on discussions, or send me an email and say, I know what you're going with there, or that was not my situation. My situation was this. Please share. I love it. I usually, if there's not points for it, I'll give you extra credit for it, because it's extremely valuable to me as an instructor, for future courses and to know who you are. So thank you very much for everything that you do.